Hey guys, SumoSumo84 here, and I'm gonna teach you on how to make a simple iPhone app, and this is for beginners only, so if you're an advanced user, wait for my next tutorial, which will be meant for advanced users, and it will cover more advanced topics. I just released my first app, and you guys should totally get it. It's called Square Dodge. I'll put a link in the description, and it's a great app. Um, so we're gonna do new, file new, project. And we're going to do a view-based application. Product name, simple counter. Next. And yes, create. Okay, I don't know what that was about, but alright. I have Xcode 4.0, and it's $5 for normal people, but I'm a developer, so it's free. So you have to have 4.0, I guess, to follow along with some of the more advanced things. I mean, obviously you can follow along with 3.2 if you know how to work the program. But right now I'm gonna have the portrait regular, deployment target 4.0, so I like doing that. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna go everything in here. We don't need to worry about anything in here so much. It's everything. It's all of these files. All of these files is what we need to worry about. Actually, we don't even need to worry about these. We don't need to worry about these three. We will go over them in later tutorials. They're not really important to what we need right now. It's these three that are important. This is where we're going to initialize all our code, get it ready, and this is where we're going to make all those initializations work. So we're going to put the code that makes the initializations work behind it. You'll see what I mean later. And this is a XIB, a zip file, and this is basically a graphical editor, so where you can put buttons, labels, and everything down. And we're going to get this set up here and go to View, Utilities, Object Library, if this is not already set up, and then you got libraries and all of these things, but there's no selection. Well, you can select the view and do that stuff. But what we're going to need here is a button. So you're gonna go down to this thing. It's a little view of all the objects you can put on the field, and you're going to want to search for button, and it's going to be second to the top. So we'll have a button, and we'll make it a larger button, like so. Now these blue lines you're seeing, see these blue lines? It helps you arrange them, and you don't have to worry about being perfect, as this is just a test application. And on here we'll just put down +1 label. Up here this is a label, and we'll put down 0, and we will center this, and that is good. Let me make sure that this is centered on the actual application, and that looks pretty good. Actually, what we can do is we can make it a little bigger, and that actually doesn't make the actual word bigger, but we can, no, not this, the wrong one. We will change this around. Oh. Okay, you can't change it like there, you gotta press this button. Change it by this, make it 36, 48, there we go. What this application is basically going to do, it has no real purpose, but when you press this button, it's going to increment this, it's going to increment a variable, and it's going to print the variable out on the screen with using this label. So we have basically this setup, and we're going to create some IB outlets, and I'll explain what they are in a second. So to create IB outlets, you're going to want to go into the .h file. So we need an IB outlet, And an IB outlet is letting the compiler, the program, know that the variable you're going to type next is going to be able to be connected to the XIB. So, but the variable also needs a type, so let's put on the type. So we have a label, and so we're going to type in UI label, and the UI stands for user interface. And you're going to want to type in a star to make the variable a pointer. I'm not going to go into pointers as they're a little complex. You wouldn't really understand them right now, and there's really no simple way to describe them without being wrong. There's only a complex way to describe them. So just do what you're told for now, and you'll be fine. So now you can name this whatever you want, and we'll name this number. And you always have to put a semicolon at the end of your statement to let the compiler know you're done. And then we don't need any more IB outlets because you don't need one for the button, and I'll explain how that's going to work in a second. But what we do need is an integer, so we can do int, and we can call this number. And we don't need this to be a pointer. Wait, hold on. Oh, we already have this named number, so we'll put this number int. This doesn't need to be a pointer because, alright, but it just, okay, IB outlets, from now, for all the simple stuff, IB outlets need to be pointers. Integers, booleans, and we'll go into that stuff, don't need to be pointers right now. They might in the future, it depends what we get into. But this is what we're going to need, an int number int. And we're going to get into a little object-oriented programming, and I'll show you what that is later. But right now, we're done with the variables and we're getting into methods. So we're going to do an IB action. And the IB action is a method. You name the return statement. This is usually where the return statement can go. It can be an integer and a string, things like that. But right now it's going to be an IB action. And you're not actually returning anything. But what IB action is it's basically a method that is connected to a button or a clickable or a activatable thing in the XIB that will do something, and when you do whatever, and when you I can't think of the word, when you click whatever the user interface item that's clickable or interactivable, if that's the right word, the code in the IB action, the code you put behind here, will be executed. Now we can't just leave it like this. We have to give it a name so it's unique. We'll call this increments IB action. This can be anything you want. Now we're not going to put any code yet because we're only declaring everything in this. So you know what you know what the methods and the variables are in the .h. It's really easy to use, and you put all the code behind it in the .m. So since we're going to do a little object-oriented programming here, very low-level object-oriented programming, I may say, we're going to create another one, call it void. Yeah, void. We won't get into returning yet. We could do a return here, but I don't want to get into that yet. One step at a time, people. And we're going to call this increment BTS. And that's going to stand for behind the scenes. So this is where the code is. And I'll explain why we're doing this. So now we have everything that we need. IB outlet, int, IB action, and this. And it's void means it's not returning anything. So when it's dark like this, it means you need to save it. So command save, or command S for saving. And now we're going to connect everything that we need to. So back to the XIB. This is basically a representation of these two files. So if you right click this, you've got your outlets, your IB outlets. So one of them was number, and that was the label. So there we go. Now anytime that we change the number here, this will change. So basically, the variable number is connected to this. And we had one action, an increment IB action, and we can connect it to this button because it's a button. And we're going to do touch up inside. Touch up inside means you're touching it and you're letting up, and you're letting up inside the button. So you're not letting up outside the button. And you can do that. There's very many different things you could do. So save it, and you've got all your connections you should need. So what we're going to do now is go back here. We're going to copy these and paste them in the .m. Make yourself a little room. You're going to want to do all your code in between these two, so give yourself room. So now that we've pasted them, they can't be semicolons anymore. They have to be curly brackets. And if you have Xcode 4, it automatically completes them, which is very nice. Some people will do it down there, but this is my preference. It doesn't really matter. So we're going to start with this, and for increment IB action, there's going to be no code in here at all, except that we're going to call this method. So we have to do self. Self is like kind of like this, I guess, in Java. If you're Java, it's kind of like it. I don't know if it's the exact same. I'd have to do more research. But self, so we're basically, self is this class, and increment will increment BTS. So self, you're looking in the class self, so this class, and you're looking for the method increment BTS. So what this line is doing is calling all the code in this method. So what we're going to do is put the code in here. So we need to set the, now we're going to go down here and to a pre-made method called viewDidLoad, and this is basically, once the view loads, this is the initialization. Everything in here will go out, will be executed once the view is loaded. So we'll figure out. So what we want to do is set number in equal to 0. So and then increment BTS. It's as easy. Number int plus plus, and that means every time this button is clicked, it calls this method, which inside this method it has number int plus plus. Plus plus means it increments the number by 1. But that's not it, because that doesn't actually do anything but change the variable. We also have to set the label to number int, and how we do that is we get the label, which we called number, and then you're taking the attribute of number called text, and you're setting it equal to a string, an NS string. NS is, can't remember right now, but make sure string is correct. NS string, and then, so basically what's coming next is string with format. And press tab to complete. And right now, to create an NS string, you have to do @ quote quote, and then just close that, and it will fill this in. Now ignore this right here. This is just saying that it's a string, but this is going to say that it's a string with a format, and that means that you can put integers variables in there. And how we do this is we do %i for integer, or you could do %b for boolean, or anything. Right now we're doing %i. And how do we know what %i is? Well, you do this. This is another parameter. So for another parameter, you separate the parameters with commas. And string with format takes two different parameters. It takes the string, and if there's a %i or a %b, whatever, you have to then explain this in the order that they're presented. So if it has a %I, then %B, you'd explain number int first because %I is first, and then the boolean. But we don't have a %B. I'm just explaining how this works. So we only have this, and we're saying that %I is equal to this variable. That's not so hard, so this will actually work, and we can run this and it will work. And right now it's compiling the code, so it's building the code so it can work on the iPhone, iPod, or iPad. And the building takes the longest, and then once it's done building, it runs it on the simulator. And if you're an iPhone developer, you can. So we're on the simulator, and it's running, and +1, so it actually changes, and we can keep plussing 1 as many times as we want, and that's pretty cool. Now, I might continue this by explaining if and for statements later, but this will be the end of this tutorial, and I'll probably continue off this using different buttons that will use if, else, for, or if else statements, for loops, while loops, and everything. That'll all be connected to this one application. But for now, that's it. It should have worked for you. If it didn't, just post a comment, and I will be glad to help you. Thanks for watching, and you can just quit out of this because it's a separate application, and you'll be okay to go. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe.